If there's one city that ever commanded the world's gaze in astonished wonder, it is undeniably Rome, the immortal heart of a glorious empire. Yet, behind its majestic arches and resplendent temples lies a truth few dare to voice, a truth colder even than its marble slabs. The Rome that history celebrates, the pinnacle of power and civilization, was simultaneously a city built and sustained by the sweat, tears, hungry bellies, countless injustices, and the silent lives of millions whose names are now almost entirely forgotten. In the next few moments, we will together peel back the layers of time, so you no longer perceive Rome merely as a soulless collection of beautiful ruins. Instead, you will come to feel Rome as a truly living entity, a complex and contradiction-ridden reality. It was a city deafeningly noisy, suffocatingly dense, and so crowded that every step was a push and a shove. Nearly 1 million souls jostled on every street, in every dwelling, on every patch of land, simply striving to survive each day. This was a city where power resided at the apex of the social hierarchy, lavish and untouchable. Beneath it, countless humble lives strained, bent their backs, and poured out their last ounce of strength to prevent an entire colossal empire from collapsing under its own immense weight. And what was the most terrifying aspect, the one that should send shivers down our spines? The deeper we look into the Rome of 2 millennia ago, the further we delve into the nooks and crannies of its ancient life, the clearer we discern the familiar shadows of so many societies, so many cities, even in today's world. History is not merely a sequence of past events, but a mirror reflecting the eternal laws of human nature. Imagine, if only for a fleeting blink of an eye, the magic of time suddenly transports us back. Every silent heap of stones before our eyes, every desolate ruin suddenly springs to life, brimming with vitality. No longer mere fragments of the past, no longer faint echoes of a long-lost civilization, but rather Rome, on a September morning in 100 AD, radiant and powerful, a city still breathing in hurried gasps, moving ceaselessly like a swirling river, noisy as the mighty, beating heart of the entire ancient world. This was not merely a large city, it was the largest mega-city humanity had ever known at that time, a marvel of population concentration, a place where approximately 800,000 to 1 million people from all corners of the world rubbed shoulders, building together and enduring together. When Rome was at its zenith, London was still just a small settlement along the chilly River Thames. Paris remained a modest town with dirt roads. Constantinople, the future symbol of the Eastern Roman Empire, had not even been conceived. Yet here, under the golden reign of Emperor Trajan, Rome was the unshakable heart of a vast and overwhelming empire, stretching from the harsh lands of Britannia in the north to the distant Euphrates River in the east, from the scorching deserts of North Africa to the majestic Rhine and Danube rivers. But if one wished to find the true strength of that empire, it wasn't on the battlefield, with its invincible legions or resounding victories. Rather, it was in the fabric of daily life, in the ordinary moments of people waking up, beginning a new day in the heart of this city. The morning begins in Subura, Rome's most densely populated, cramped, and authentic residential district. This was not the Rome of perfect stone statues, magnificent temples, or glorious triumphal arches that posterity often extols in books and paintings. This was the Rome where common folk lived, where laborers shed sweat and tears simply to exist, where the majority of residents jostled in narrow alleys, only a few meters wide, sometimes barely enough for 2 people to walk side by side. On either side rose towering multi-story rental buildings, the Times Insulae, constructed from sturdy Roman brick and concrete, but often with inferior quality timber. These buildings could reach 4, 5, even 6 stories high, stretching skyward like colossal human beehives. And the higher one climbed, the harsher and more deprived life became. The poorest, the most vulnerable, typically lived on the uppermost floors, where there was no piped water and no private latrines. Everything, from clean water for drinking and daily use to household waste, had to be carried by hand up and down dark, steep, and filthy wooden staircases. Some nights, it wasn't just dirty water that was tossed onto the streets below. but anything residents no longer had space for in their cramped rooms emptied directly onto the heads of unsuspecting passers-by. Such was the might of Rome, such was its civilization. Yet, right in its heart, within the narrow alleys of Subura, lingered the pervasive smell of baking ovens, animal waste, rancid olive oil, and the suffocating discomfort of jostling crowds. These are the details history, often penned by the victors, sometimes conveniently omits, but the people of today should never forget. A civilization might boast of constructing monumental wonders, but its true dignity is ultimately measured by the daily lives of its poorest and most vulnerable citizens. The city awakened to the creaking grind of wooden wheels on cobblestone streets, a quintessential sound of Roman dawn, accompanied by the lively calls of hawkers in a multitude of languages, creating a chaotic yet vibrant symphony, and the hurried, heavy footsteps of laborers who had to start their day long before the sun's first rays appeared. A baker opened his small, street-facing stall, the glow of his oven fire casting a warm light and chasing away the crisp morning chill. Fine white wheat bread was reserved for the affluent, while loaves made from barley or inferior flour, sometimes mixed with impurities, formed the staple diet of the vast majority. On a street corner, a public fountain already had a long queue of people, waiting patiently. 9 aqueducts, brilliant feats of Roman engineering, brought pure, life-sustaining water from springs dozens of kilometers away, supplying millions of liters to Rome daily. It was an extraordinary engineering marvel, an achievement that even many modern cities would find admirable. Yet, amidst this marvel, people still had to push and shove to collect water for their families. And it was here, in this very queue, that Rome spoke a stark truth to us, a lesson that remains profoundly relevant. Scientific and technological progress does not automatically equate to social equity. A society might boast of its magnificent infrastructure, but the more pertinent question is who truly benefits fully from it, and who merely stands at the foot of such grandeur, gazing upwards with eyes full of longing and despair. From Subura, our path leads us to the Roman Forum, the political and economic heart, and the ultimate symbol of Rome's absolute power. As the view unfolds, the entire space transforms dramatically. Solemn temples dedicated to the gods, vast civic basilicas, glorious triumphal arches, and grand public works interconnected, forming a colossal stage for power, justice, and ostentation. This was no longer just an ordinary marketplace where goods were bought and sold. This was where laws were fiercely debated, where the honor of every citizen was asserted, where the glorious past and the challenging present of the empire were simultaneously embodied in every stone step, every column. Senators in their bright togas, adorned with prestigious purple stripes symbolizing their noble status, slowly made their way through the noisy crowds towards the Curia Julia, the Senate House. Lawsuits unfolded publicly and loudly, attracting widespread public attention. Orators and lawyers delivered eloquent speeches with sharp, incisive arguments. The crowds commented and buzzed with excitement, while disputing parties interrupted each other, creating a fervent and tense atmosphere. At the edges of the square, professional money changers meticulously inspected and exchanged coins with careful precision. Rome's monetary system, based on exquisitely minted denarii and sestertii, was remarkably stable and accurate, forming the backbone for flourishing trade across 3 continents. But if we look closer, amidst the magnificent robes of the elite, we confront an undeniable truth, an indelible stain. A very significant portion of Rome's population consisted of enslaved people. They bore the burden of all arduous tasks, from transporting goods to keeping records, from educating their masters' children to healing the sick, from constructing grand edifices to catering to every household need. Some enslaved individuals possessed greater erudition than their own masters, carrying within them a wealth of knowledge, yet were utterly devoid of freedom. This was the most painful, most cruel paradox of the ancient world, a scar deeply etched into humanity's conscience. It also serves as a timeless warning for all societies. A civilization can be highly advanced and outwardly refined, yet remain ruthless at its very core, if it condones exploitation and disregards human dignity. Leaving the solemn political arena, Rome's bustling, vibrant rhythm of life became most apparent in the goods distribution area. Here, food and necessities from across the empire converged, distributed to feed nearly 1 million people daily. Rome could not feed itself. Its surrounding land was too limited, and its population too vast. The city's very survival depended entirely on colossal shipments from the port of Ostia, on grain from the fertile fields of Egypt and North Africa, and on an endless stream of goods from every distant corner of the empire. Fresh fruits, seafood, bread, olive oil, rare herbs, and countless exquisite crafts all poured into this hub, merging into the relentless current of life. To maintain peace in the city and avert uprisings from the poor, the emperor distributed free grain to approximately 200,000 eligible citizens. This was a welfare policy, but simultaneously, a sophisticated instrument of power control. Ensuring food for the populace meant keeping the city calm and maintaining social order. A fishmonger from Sicily hawked his wares with a distinctive local accent. Fresh-caught fish laid out on green leaves were a luxury only the wealthy could afford. Salted fish and dried fish, in contrast, were the common fare of the poor. Fermented fish sauce, garum, with its pungent flavor, was present in nearly every Roman meal, from aristocratic tables to squalid shacks. Porters, their bodies stooped under the weight of large crates and baskets, trekked dozens of kilometers daily. They exchanged their exhausted strength for short lifespans, living silent and anonymous lives. Nearby, a female merchant from Alexandria, with intricately braided hair, sold medicines and rare herbs. This attested to Rome's immense size and its astonishing cultural and ethnic diversity. Here were elegant Greeks, astute Syrian traders, enigmatic Egyptians, wise Jews, robust Germanics, and dark-skinned Africans. People flocked to Rome for wealth, for opportunities to change their lives, for the desire of freedom, or simply because wherever power resides, hope is always drawn, no matter how tenuous. But perhaps what made Rome truly great was not just its ability to attract people from every corner of the world. Rather, it was its capacity to compel vastly different destinies, with their unique dreams and worries, to coexist within the empire's colossal, intricate machinery. This was both the boundless strength and the formidable burden of every megacity throughout human history. As the sun began to set, painting Rome's sky in hues of rose, the city took on its evening guise, a distinctly different beauty. Shops reopened, their oil lamps casting a warm glow. The streets filled again with people dining, drinking, conversing, and exchanging news. On every street corner were small eateries, known as Time's Thermopolia, featuring stone counters, where large terracotta jars held steaming, hot food. Many residents in the cramped rental apartments could not safely cook for themselves due to high fire risks and poor sanitary conditions. Eating out, therefore, was almost a necessity for them. Dinner was usually simple but filling. Lentil soup, sautéed vegetables, bread, and occasionally stewed meat on more prosperous days. Some drank Time's posca, a concoction of water and wine vinegar, a cheap and common beverage. Others opted for inexpensive wine brought in from Etruria. A Greek musician stood on the street, playing double flutes with melancholic melodies that carried a sense of homesickness. Passers-by paused to listen, then dropped a few small coins into an earthenware pot as an offering. Nearby, a Syrian vendor hawked delicious dried figs and chestnuts. Another sold strange amulets to ward off evil spirits and ill fortune. With every few steps, the language shifted. Authoritative Latin, melodious Greek, resonant Aramaic, ancient Egyptian. Evening Rome resembled a microcosm, a universe of diverse hues, where people brought their homelands and cultures with them, but had to learn to live and adapt within the collective current of a vast empire. There was something remarkably familiar, profoundly relatable, in that scene. For whether 2,000 years ago or today, every great city in this world is ultimately built by immigrants, by manual laborers, by those seeking a chance at a better life, and by those simply hoping for a hot meal at the end of the day. As night fully descended, it enveloped the city in a mystical, profound darkness. And it was in this deep twilight that Rome unveiled its truest face, a mosaic of solitude, danger, and unyielding resilience. Once darkness fell, the heavy carts, forbidden during the day to prevent congestion, were finally permitted to rumble through the streets. The incessant screech of wooden wheels grinding against the cobblestones echoed through every alley and corridor, a relentless cacophony that robbed many of their sleep. Night watches and fire brigades patrolled, their flickering oil lamps casting small, hesitant pools of light into the ink-black labyrinth of the alleys. Wealthy citizens enjoyed the luxury of lanterns illuminating their doorways, a privilege conspicuously absent for those crammed into the city's rented tenements. The city itself plunged into a profound darkness, fractured only by these sparse, struggling specks of light. High above, on Capitoline Hill, the majestic temple of Jupiter, supreme among the gods, silently surveyed the scattering of lights across Rome's 7 hills, a vast, twinkling constellation of human endeavor and vulnerability. Yet, Rome never truly slept. Beneath the cloak of night, the city's clandestine pulse continued unabated, a testament to its ceaseless life. Beggars huddled for meager shelter beneath eaves and awnings, seeking brief respite from the biting chill. Brothels glowed with a persistent, alluring light, beckoning passers-by with their promise of fleeting pleasure. Night laborers, bakers, and porters at the riverside docks toiled without pause, their relentless efforts ensuring the city would awaken promptly and without delay the next morning. Somewhere along the Tiber, cargo was still being unloaded from ships, a vital prelude to the bustling day ahead. Come morning, the scent of warm bread would again waft from ovens. Market stalls would reopen, vendors' cries would fill the air, water carriers would resume their arduous tasks, and the streets would once more swell with surging crowds. Rome could not afford to halt. For a city that sustained the power of a mighty empire also had to sustain itself, hour by relentless hour, day after day, without a single moment of rest. And perhaps this is the most potent, most profound realization lingering after this journey through time. Beyond all the glories chronicled in history books, past the tales of emperors, grand temples, and military triumphs, Rome in 100 AD was far more than just a magnificent capital. It was the city of the baker, rising before dawn, his hands calloused and face dusted with flour, of the mother, dwelling in a cramped, upper-story apartment, burdened by daily anxieties yet boundless in her love for her children, of the enslaved person, trading their very strength for the faint, elusive hope of freedom, of the street vendor, speaking a foreign tongue, nurturing a humble dream of a better life. It was the city of these ordinary, nameless individuals who tirelessly bore the weight of keeping a colossal metropolis functioning smoothly. We often admire empires for the colossal structures they erect, for their formidable military might, and for their immense wealth. Yet, we ought to remember them more for the quiet suffering endured by their people, the untold sacrifices made to uphold their grandeur and stability. This is a timeless lesson, an eternal truth that resonates across millennia. Civilization is not merely defined by splendid marble slabs or majestic arches. It resides in how a society perceives and treats its most vulnerable members, in how it wields its power, whether to protect its people or to oppress them, in the nature of its public spectacles and entertainments, in how it feeds its populace, fairly or unjustly, and crucially, in its remembrance that all dazzling glories are built upon the countless, finite, and often fragile lives of its individuals. But to stop there would be to understand Rome purely intellectually, through dry facts and figures, without truly connecting with it emotionally, from the heart. What haunts me most isn't the sheer scale of the Colosseum, the ingenious engineering of its aqueducts, or the vast reach of Emperor Trajan's power. Rather, it's the profound, lingering sense that every single stone in Rome was once drenched in the sweat of a real person, that these very streets heard the weary sighs of a mother after a day of relentless struggle, witnessed the grinding anxieties of a father striving to provide, and felt the calloused, rough hands of countless laborers whose names history never bothered to record. We are easily captivated by what endures the timeless architectural marvels that still stand. But sometimes, the most poignant memories are found in what has vanished forever. The voices no one can hear anymore, long blended into the dust of ages. The footsteps no one can count, imprinted on roads now turned to mere dust. The lives lived to their fullest, dedicated wholeheartedly to an era perceived as glorious and radiant, yet those very people never truly basked in its glow. And perhaps that is why history still needs to be retold in a way that is closer to the human experience, more authentic and more humane. Not so we might sit in distant admiration of ancestors, as if gazing at an untouchable statue, but rather so we might humbly recognize that every society, no matter how powerful or advanced, is susceptible to repeating age-old errors, the fundamental flaws inherent in human nature. When power becomes too vast, people easily convince themselves that the suffering of others is a necessary evil, an acceptable price for greatness. When entertainment grows too potent and stimulating, individuals can become desensitized to cruelty, growing indifferent to the plight of their fellow human beings. When a city becomes excessively wealthy and prosperous, it's all too easy for its inhabitants to forget the dark, damp upper stories of tenements where the poor reside, places no one wishes to acknowledge or remember. Rome was once the undisputed center of the world, the very heart of an empire believed to be eternal. Yet, even the world's nexus could not escape the relentless, unforgiving march of time. Walls crumbled, arches collapsed, and the roars that once shook the Colosseum now exist only in the imaginative echoes of posterity. What ultimately remains isn't perpetual power or resounding victories, but rather the lessons gleaned from its rise and fall. And the greatest lesson, in my estimation, is this: never judge a civilization solely by its opulent facade, its monumental structures, or its scientific and technological advancements. Instead, observe how its elderly and infirm are treated, whether they receive care and respect. Examine what its poor endure, whether they are given consideration or callously abandoned. Note how that society employs its power to protect its citizens or to crush and exploit them. Consider whether, amidst its boasts of order, greatness, and achievement, it still retains compassion and humanity. For if these qualities are absent, then all its magnificent constructions are nothing more than beautiful stones, concealing a cold, brutal truth within. Perhaps this is why the narrative of Rome isn't exclusively for history buffs or archaeologists. It is for anyone who has lived long enough to grasp that the ultimate worth of a human life isn't measured by outward glory, status, wealth, or fame, but rather by how we treat each other in the most ordinary of days, through kindness, compassion, and justice. A warm meal on a cold evening, a safe roof providing shelter from rain and sun, a vulnerable voice heard, a life not dismissed, not forgotten. These, truly, are the foundational pillars of civilization, the core values that forge a truly livable society. The young need to hear this, to understand that progress isn't merely about building higher, faster, or larger. It's not solely about chasing grand, macroscopic ambitions. The older generations, having traversed more years, grasp this truth with even greater depth, for with each passing season, they realize that the most precious commodity is never the clamor of victory or the spectacle of ostentation. Rather, it is the profound ability to retain one's humanity and compassion amidst a world perpetually tempted by raw power and authority. Rome, once the greatest heart of the world, where mighty legions marched across continents, where emperors decreed the destinies of millions, and where colossal architectural feats defied the very concept of time. It stood as an unparalleled monument to human ambition and power, an empire that seemed destined for eternal existence. Yet even Rome, with all its perceived invincibility and enduring stone, ultimately yielded to the ceaseless current of time. Today, all that remains are fragments of its former glory, weathered stones, silent ruins, and faint echoes of forgotten triumphs and tragedies. The clamor of its bustling markets, the thunderous cheers within the Colosseum, the vibrant debates of its forums all have long faded into oblivion, leaving only a stark reality. Even the grandest material achievements are fleeting. Nevertheless, something endures far longer than stone, something more resilient than any empire, and more profound than any monument. It is the invaluable tapestry of lessons woven from human experience, passed down from one generation to the next. Lessons on the intoxicating allure of power, the fragility of peace, the perpetual necessity of compassion, and the steep price of hubris. These are the true immortal legacies, etched not in stone, but within the collective consciousness of humanity. And if this contemplation, this glimpse into the impermanence of even the grandest things, stirs something within you, perhaps a reflection on the society we inhabit today, on the cities we are currently building, or even on the complex journey of your own life, then that, truly, is the greatest value history imparts. It is not merely a chronicle of past events, it is a mirror reflecting our present, a compass guiding our future. For history does not truly lie hidden behind us, nor is it merely piles of dusty books forgotten in archives, or tales of a distant, bygone era. On the contrary, history pulses vibrantly, distinctly present before our very eyes, actively shaping every moment of today. It merely assumes different names, perhaps global economics, climate change, or populism. It wears different attire, not the toga of an ancient Roman senator, but the sharp suits of modern diplomats, the casual wear of digital activists, or the uniforms of contemporary soldiers. And it speaks in a different tongue, not Latin or Greek, but the intricate algorithms of the internet, the urgent rhetoric of politics, or the silent language of environmental devastation. Yet, the fundamental human tragedies, the universal struggles, and the eternal questions of ethics and existence remain strikingly unchanged. If this narrative resonates with you, if it sparks a flicker of realization or a lingering concern, and you believe its message deserves to be heard by more, then please leave a comment sharing what troubles you most after listening. Let us collectively unravel the intricate knots of our shared human experience. And please extend this contemplation, this vital conversation, to your loved ones, a family member, a trusted friend, or especially a young person standing on the precipice of shaping their own world. For there are invaluable lessons, profound insights forged from millennia of human endeavor, that if not carefully passed on, if allowed to fade into oblivion, will undoubtedly force future generations to pay a steep price to relearn them from scratch, a cost far greater than any monument could ever measure.